My name's Kimberly Reed. I'm the director and producer of a film called Prodigal Sons. Prodigal Sons is a story about my family, and in a lot of ways we're just kind of like any other all-American family that has to deal with a lot of issues of identity and relationships. I think we're all kind of trying to sort out relationships with our family. My older brother Mark was adopted, and he had a really difficult life. And then he found out he was the grandson of Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth. And we were all kind of blown away. You know, he has this new identity. I'm transgender, and I decided to go back to my high school reunion, and I have a new identity. So this film is really about both of us having new identities and trying to start over with our relationship. And I think it's what a lot of families go through. I mean, we all kind of grow up and move away from home and then come back and try to reestablish these relationships with our family, especially with our siblings. So that's what our film really takes a very close look at. The examples are pretty extreme, you know. It's not something that every family goes through, certainly. But at the end of the day, it's really just a film about relationships, about sibling relationships. I thought that Prodigal Sons was an important film to make because on the surface there can be some pretty wild stories. I mean, my brother Mark turns out to be the grandson of Orson Welles, and I have my own new identity. It's not something that every family goes through. But for me to tell those stories, these very surprising stories in a way that every family can relate to it, that everybody comes back to these same issues of identity and trying to reestablish relationships with our family and trying to work through those. It was very important for me to tell that story in a way that everybody can relate to. Well, anytime you make a documentary, I think you're pretty much hoping to be surprised. And when you make a personal documentary about your own family, those surprises can be something that as a filmmaker you kind of want to latch onto and go on that roller coaster. But personally, you may not want those to be happening at the same time. So there was a bit of a pull between those two. But ultimately, I found that if I could just ignore the filmmaker side of me in a way, because filmmaking was such a natural means of expression for me, and the camera became so comfortable within our family and within the relationship with my brother that the whole filmmaking apparatus just kind of melted away and disappeared. And what we ended up getting are some really, really intimate scenes that there's no way you could get them otherwise if it weren't personal. Yeah, it's interesting because in many ways it's a film about a family, and it really focuses on our family. And you would think that might be limited, but our film has this really epic scope as well. It takes place in Montana. It's the big sky country. Everything's very beautiful. There's these wide vistas, and we actually end up traveling all over the world to San Diego and Los Angeles and the Northwest, and even a trip to Croatia, where my brother ends up visiting somebody who was very important to Orson Welles and kind of learning a lot about his legacy there. So yeah, it's once again, I think the more you focus on the particular, the more universal things can become. So in a way, it's a very intimate drama about family, about siblings, but by focusing on that, it's almost like we're able to cover this vast vista. I do. I mean, it's hard to boil generations and a bunch of people down into an hour and a half. But by working in miniature like that, I think that sometimes you have truths emerge that wouldn't come out necessarily unless you were really trying to distill things and you were really trying to compress. And I don't know, it's, sometimes I think of it as a, you know, poems are vastly compressed, and when you squish things like that, these truths come out, and sometimes they're quite beautiful. And for me, I think that the real proof of whether or not the complexity of our family comes through is based on just the fact that my family loves the film, and even though there are some very difficult and challenging things that happen, everybody is just really strongly supporting and feels like it's okay to show those difficult times, those really challenging times, because the real complexity, the immense love that's also in our family comes through as well. Yes, Prodigal Son is my first film at AFI Festival.
How does that feel?
Oh, it feels great. I love this festival. It's a wonderful festival. It's we premiered at a different festival that was it was at the Telluride Film Festival, and it's in this mountain town, and it's hard to get to, and it's kind of a kind of self-enclosed in many ways. So it's great. This feels like we're really coming out into the world. And